Welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, Oregon's statewide Chamber of Commerce. At Oregon Business Matters, we focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and our state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. Today, I am in Redmond, joined by Deb Flagan, Vice President of Community Engagement and Giving with Hayden Homes. Hayden Homes was founded in Redmond nearly 40 years ago and has now expanded to Washington, Idaho, and Montana, in addition to its work around the state of Oregon. It's the largest private home builder in the Pacific Northwest. And for more than 25 years, Deb has led the company's community engagement, philanthropic giving, marketing initiatives, and probably so much more over that time. So welcome, Deb. Thanks for talking with me today.
Welcome to Redmond. We are grateful to have you here. It's a glowing recommendation or introduction. And I'm grateful to be here on Oregon Business Matters because Oregon businesses matter.
Well, thank you. We think so too. Okay, well, let's get into it. We're here in this beautiful facility, which I think opened about a year ago. We'll come back to that on a sunny day in Central Oregon. But let's start, with some of the basics. Most people have heard of Hayden Homes, but probably don't actually know much about the company, aside from the fact that you build residential properties. So give us just a little bit of the history of Hayden Homes and the various lines of business the company has.
Well, Hayden Homes started 38 years ago. Hayden's parents, Bob and Virginia Watson, they retired in Redmond, Oregon. 38 years ago, it was about 2,800 people here, so a very small town. Today, Hayden Homes has grown to the largest privately owned home builder in the Northwest. We're building about 28,000 homes for the hardworking families, and we're serving mostly secondary and rural communities throughout Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana.
So what is a secondary community? I mean, it's probably what it sounds like, but that's kind of maybe not your larger metro area like a Portland and its immediate suburbs, but maybe some of those like the Bend Redmond community or Eugene. Is that the kind of size we should be thinking about?
That's correct. So we say underserved secondary markets. And we specifically look at areas outside of the metro areas, so we do not purposely build in Portland metro and or the Seattle metro areas. And we find housing-focused cities. And so these are cities that are really focused on figuring out how they can have a workforce, how they can have communities thrive, and how they can provide housing and make sure that there's housing to support those businesses in their community.
That is something we're definitely going to come back to because I know housing, I don't have a conversation in Central Oregon without housing coming up. So I want to come back to that, but a little more just about the background. So some people might not have known that Hayden is actually a person. So that's good to know. And what a growth and trajectory in the company. There's also a couple of other brand names people might know, right? Like Simplicity or Wise Size. And is there anything that distinguishes them?
So there's a brand of families is how we describe it. Most people know Hayden Homes as a community builder. So we're building in 65 different cities.
Wow.
Throughout the 4 different states. And we have about 100 communities that we're building. That is, we build a model home, and then we're usually selling somewhere between 20 homes up to 100 homes in that community. We also have
I was just going to say that's a lot to keep track of when we'll talk about permitting probably here a little later on, but I'm immediately doing the math on multiplying that number of cities by all of the restrictions. So we'll come back to that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
We do that a lot as well. Secondly, we have the Simplicity by Hayden Homes, and Simplicity is a offshoot of Hayden Homes. It's actually, we will build a Hayden home on your own land. That was created in 2008 right in the middle of the recession. One of our CEO decided that we should start a new company when most people were not doing that. But we had been asked for years and years if we would build a Hayden home on your own land because we're building in so many rural communities. And so we've been doing that since then.
Great.
And then the third brand family is our Wise Size, and that mostly is focused on cottages and ADUs. And we work largely with investors that might have a small parcel of land and they don't want to deal with the headache, or maybe they don't know how to get the housing built, and so they can work with Simplicity, and we can build some Wise-size homes for them on their property.
Oh, that's great. That's good diversification that people probably wouldn't think about. You also created in the late 90s First Story, which is a nonprofit lender. And I think this is so fascinating because it's a really tangible example of a for-profit company seeing a need in its own space and then taking on that philanthropic effort to kind of help people make home buying a reality. So can you tell folks a little bit about First Story?
You bet. So Hayden is our owner, and Hayden is one of the most philanthropic individuals that I know. He started a nonprofit in his parents' name back in 1998. The basis of First Story is that we are offering a zero down, zero interest loan for 30 years for individuals that are making 80% area median income or below. And Hayden Homes is actually building these homes with the support of private donations. So we work with our manufacturers and our suppliers to build these homes. They're located in Hayden Homes communities, and we will be delivering our 130th home ownership opportunity this summer. 100% of those are first-time home buyers, and 80% of them are the first in their family to ever own a home.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's extraordinary to help bridge that divide. That's great. And we talked about this a little bit, so I'm going to flip back to some of the kind of core operations. We talked about the company's establishment in Redmond. That was in 1989. And since then, you've expanded to the other states. You mentioned Washington, Idaho, and recently Montana. Obviously, that's a geographic niche here in the Pacific Northwest, so they're close states. But how does the company think about where to expand? And is there anything on the horizon?
So our business model has always been based on building and delivering a home that the local workforce can afford. And I think about how the history of the company started. When Bob, Hayden's father, started the company, interest rates were at 10.9% in 1989. And he knew that if he was going to be able to build a home that somebody could afford in Redmond, we would have to look at what they were making in wages and then be able to figure out what 10.9% interest rates could afford you. And believe it or not, we started the home of the 49ers. So we were building homes for $49,990.
Oh, that's so interesting. So he kind of he didn't build a home and then price it based on cost and what he wanted to make. He figured out what people would be able to afford in the market he wanted to serve, that workforce market, and then sort of engineered a product that obviously would be quality, but fit in that affordability.
That's exactly right.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
And that is still the basis of who our company is today. And so our business model is that we look at the area median income in every single county that we build, and we then figure out what that family of four wage earner can afford, and then we work our tail off to be able to bring a house to market that meets that wage earner. I'll say that when you ask the question about how did you decide where you were going to grow, our company is probably a little bit different than most companies, because usually you may start in one community like Redmond, and then maybe you decide that you're going to expand to Bend and then to Sisters, etc. We actually were building in Redmond, and the gentleman that was a landowner and a farmer that was in Othello, Washington, drove down, met with Bob, and said, I have a farm and I cannot afford to have individuals driving from the Tri-Cities to come work on my farm, and there is no housing up here. Would you come up and look at a way to actually build housing for the farm workers? And that was the second place that we ever built houses, was in Othello, Washington. And then the third place that we decided that we were going to build houses was in Springfield, Oregon. And that was a situation where the mill was still in full capacity, and they were looking at ways that they could actually have housing that could support the mill.
Yeah, again, that's so interesting. So it's not just sort of the opportunity, it's the opportunity coupled with, again, that ethos around workforce and the need. So sort of grew organically from there. So I have to think that because of the county by county analysis on wages, let alone the operational requirements of various counties and cities, you guys must collect and analyze a lot of data across these now 4 states. That gives you a fairly good basis for comparison and contrast among the 4 states. So, I got to ask, how does building homes in Oregon compare or contrast to doing so in the Washington, Idaho, and Montana?
So when I started 26 years ago with Hayden Homes, we were being able to deliver a home that the area median income wage earner could afford in 100% of our communities. Today, we're doing it in 43% of our communities. Now, what I will tell you is that in the state of Oregon, just 5 years ago, we were sitting at 30%, and we've been able to increase that about 10%. And largely, that has been due to the focus on housing. Oregon was ahead of many across the nation. We know that now, as a nation, we're talking about this housing crisis, and definitely Oregon was ahead of that. And Governor Kotek was part of making sure that this was, important in her candidacy, as well as when she became governor. The HB 2001 bill that was passed in 2019 really helped to change the environment in regards to housing initially in the state. Now, we'll talk about the barriers and why it's been so challenging and why we have not been able to actually achieve some of the goals that have been set out. But when you compare the 4 different states, it is definitely the hardest place to do business in regards to building housing. And yes, we look at every single city and every single state and how much the regulation and how much the time affects the actual costs of housing.
Okay, so let's go with that for a minute. So I think people naturally, of course, are like, well, a house costs money because you've got materials and labor. And often people forget that all of that regulatory cost, time, permitting, fees, et cetera, actually get layered into that too. So talk a little bit more about that. What are some of the cost drivers that you see? And then, we could talk about, maybe how to unpack some of those for solutions.
So I think that most people think that home building is what makes housing expensive. And yes, there is costs in regards to, we say, the sticks, the bricks, and the labor, and that's the actual construction of a home. But the real problem and the real cost in regards to home building is the infrastructure and the cost of the land. And I think that that's become really apparent over the last couple of years. And I think it is largely why we have not been able to tackle and hit the goals that the governor put out, because no one truly understood how long it takes to actually get a piece of raw land, dirt, actually produced and gone through all of the city council meetings and all of the public comment, and then you actually have to go build it, and the costs that go involved with the infrastructure and the time. It takes twice as long to get a finished lot ready in the state of Oregon than it does in the state of Idaho.
Twice as long.
Twice as long. So it's a 4-year process here. It's a 2-year process in Idaho.
Yeah, and to me that feels like something that ought to be inherently fixable because, the two states could have different, outcomes or goals or regulations or whatever. But for something like that, I just don't understand why it would take twice as long. Like what in that process needs to take an extra 24 months? And so it feels like that's an attainable fix. But tell me what I'm missing.
Yeah. So I think that there's 3 or 4 different things that are different in Oregon. Number one, the land use system here in Oregon is unique to across the United States. And one of the reasons why people love to live in Oregon is because of our land use system. It's beautiful. It also is a very, very expensive and costly process. And because we have these urban growth boundaries, we've created an environment where there is a inequity in the supply and demand. And the landowners that are selling property inside the urban growth boundary can basically charge anything they want. And the developers or the builders either choose to buy the land at that price or they walk away. But that's the only choice. So we've artificially increased the land price. Secondly, the infrastructure has become a real issue. Over time, the federal government and the state government have supported and built the infrastructure in our state. And they did that for years. And then in the early 2000s, they started to pull back on the infrastructure from the national level or the federal level and the state level. And what has happened is that the cities now, if they want development, they're requiring the developers to incur the cost to connect the sewer, the water, the utilities from where it's currently at to bringing it to the on-site, which used to be paid by federally and state. So they're incurring that cost. And then in addition, they're also paying for SDC fees. So it used to be years ago that the developers were only paying for the system development charges to pay for infrastructure, which is right. But now it's the compounding of those two things that are making it so much more expensive.
Yeah, that is interesting because I think people hear the description of the first thing you were talking about and assume that what you're talking about are the SDCs, the system development charges, when in fact they're two separate things that can inflate pretty dramatically on their own as well. So, okay, that's interesting. The company has been around for nearly 40 years, navigating these challenges and expanding and growing and doing great work by workforce and community development. It's clearly a success story. So I've got to think that Hayden and Hayden Homes as the company has been approached by other states to maybe relocate. And this is something I find really interesting because it surprises some people we work with to learn that companies are courted by other states. In fact, it happens all the time. So I think I probably know the answer, but has Hayden in fact been courted to move Hayden Homes to another location?
Numerous times. And I think it's even, if you think about it on a micro scale, we are an Oregon company and we started building in Oregon and we were approached by a Washington landowner and we immediately went to Washington because there was an opportunity there. And so that was immediately out of the gate. That happens all the time. And when I think about, how many homes we're building in Oregon compared to Washington, Idaho, and Montana, you have X amount of dollars that you're going to invest each year. And the question is how long is that return going to be? How long is it going to take? Bottom line is how many homes can we provide for the hardworking families? And that really is our purpose, is supporting these communities. And if it's taking 4 years, it's not nearly as attractive to us. And so that is just on a basis of where we decide that we're going to do business. In regards to our headquarters, we're really proud of the fact that we are based in Redmond. We like the fact that we're kind of on the outskirts of Bend. We're really proud of the fact that we've helped to build this community and that we've helped to build so many communities with the houses that we built. We took it really seriously. This year was an opportunity for us to decide if we were going to invest in Oregon or if we were going to move. And over the last 38 years, we've kind of moved from shoebox to shoebox. We started in a model home, and then we moved to a small little office, and then we outgrew that quickly, and then we've been in really some small 2 buildings right next to each other, and that was where we were for almost 20 years. During COVID, it was very apparent that our culture that we really care about and the incredible team members that we have, that we were starting to see like chinks in the armor a bit. And it was really because we were not under the same roof and we were not doing, giving events together, and we weren't, playing
if you say pickleball, okay, good. I was going to say, if you say pickleball, I'm going to lose it.
But we decided that we were going to invest in a building, a headquarters, and we looked at our other opportunities in neighboring states. Ultimately, Redmond Economic Development, REDI, they approached us and said, we really want you to stay in Redmond. I think about sitting down with them initially, and we weren't really prepared to do that. And they said, we have an enterprise zone that we'd like you to look at. And if you refurbish one of the buildings that's near the Redmond airport, we would like you to consider that. And so we started going down that path. We also had a couple of other sites that we were looking at in different cities. And ultimately, we decided our 350 employees, over 100 of them live right here in Central Oregon, and they're incredible. And the reality is that we didn't want to displace them, and we also really felt like we had this history of long-term employees that we wanted to stay. It also made us really commit to the fact that we're going to be in Oregon for the next 25 years, and it made us really realize that we have to advocate and be part of the state and talk about the things that make it hard, and also show up and be a good partner.
Well, thank you for that engagement and that commitment. You do show up in a number of different ways, and this building is beautiful. And I'm glad to see all these people working here, and very grateful that you chose to stay. It is a challenge at times, but the commitment is clear. The commitment you guys have to this community and the state manifests itself in a lot of different ways. You said it earlier when talking about your boss as being one of the most philanthropic people you know. And businesses do more than just create jobs in their community, which is important. So, let's just put a period on the end of that. But they do more than that. And so talk about some of the ways that Hayden Homes has contributed to the community here and also the other communities in which it operates. We've talked about the nonprofit, but there's so much more.
So we refer to give as you go. That is our purpose. And we say we give as you go, so together we can build a strong community and lead fulfilled lives. And really this comes from the basis of who Hayden's mom was. Virginia was extremely philanthropic, and she just believed that in a world that you give more than you get. And that's how Hayden has brought up this company. And along the way, our CEO, who has been a business partner and has been a friend of Hayden since they were in high school together, which I think is also remarkable because they have been friends for, almost 50 years, and they're business partners that are still together, which I also think is incredible.
That is some serious relationship mojo. That's a lot. Kudos to them.
And then our president, Steve Klingman, he has been with the company for 26 years. Steve and I joined the company the same year. And so, we've worked together for a lot of years together. But it's us plus another 350 employees, and there's so many of them that have worked here for years and years and years, but that spirit of giving has been at the basis of who the company is. Every home that we build, this Give As You Go, we believe that every home that we build, $300 is contributed by Hayden Homes into the Give As You Go fund. Half of that goes to First Story, which is the nonprofit, and then half of it goes into a fund to support local nonprofits. We encourage our homeowners to go online and they can nominate the nonprofits that are important to them in their community. And that is a way for them it stays local, stays in that county. It also allows them to tell us what's important in their community, because not all communities look the same. And so that's a really fun new opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what a way to focus, because there's obviously so many deserving causes. You got to narrow it down somehow, and what a great way to do it is to get that feedback directly from the people who are going to be living in these homes in the communities that you built them in. So that's very cool. You have also been you talked about the people quite a bit, both in the giving ethos, but then also in the story about choosing to stay here. And it's clear that there's a passion for the workforce that you have. You have, in fact, been named the best place to work in various cities and various states over various years. What makes Hayden Homes tick as a place to work?
Well, it starts with our incredible team members. When we talk about the culture of Hayden Homes, we often hear that I can't believe that I just started to work here, and the biggest item that shows up is that someone will pick up the phone and help you. And I think that it's so strange that is not necessarily the case in so many other places. And so just feeling supported. And we have really 4 very important values here, and we really live them. One of them is to show up and put in the work. Second one is to get out on the skinny branches. So that means that we are encouraging people to do more, and that you've got a whole group of people that are here supporting you to get out there and do something different and something that scares you every day. And it's okay if you fail. And number 3 is set no limits. And so that really sets the bar in regards to excellence, and that we can do hard things, and we do them every day. And then the 4th item is giving is living. That really is the connection of encouraging our team members that it doesn't have to be monetary. We support every one of our employees with 16 hours of volunteer time, and we encourage them to take those 16 hours and invest them in their children's school and being able to volunteer there, to show up and work at the local food bank, to work with First Story on a home and help to build it. So there's numerous ways that you can do that, and we want it to be something that's unique and special to them. And they also live in the communities that we build, and so it's really a nice way that they can support the communities that they build.
Yeah, I think that's great. What a way to invest in them and in the community. So, well, look, Deb, we could probably talk for ages about the company, the community, the policy work, of course, but we are unfortunately nearing our time. Is there anything you want to make sure listeners hear about the company or your work that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I would just say that we're really proud to be a business in Oregon. We also are grateful to have the communities across the state. We're also very fortunate to get to work with a lot of cities that are really housing focused and really are working to support businesses and want businesses to be there. And we just need more of that.
It's a great way to end. Thank you very much, Deb Flagan, for joining us today and for telling us more about Hayden Homes. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. The Oregon Business Matters podcast is a production of Oregon Business and Industry, Oregon's statewide Chamber of Commerce, and our episodes can be found on all of the top podcast platforms. So please like, follow, subscribe, share, etc. For more information about Hayden Homes, where should people go, Deb?
You can go to www.haydenhomes.com Hayden-homes.com.
All right, easy enough, hayden-homes.com. And for more information about OBI, you can go to OregonBusinessIndustry.com. Thank you.